Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I am Mark Tucker. Welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Good to have you back. How's it going, Mark?
Yeah, it's going well. I don't know. I kind of want to do another one of those live sessions again.
I know what you mean. That was really fun. It's always really fun to take questions from people and talk about it and answer it and give our perspective. But
Yeah.
it's funny, it's actually kind of funny that you mentioned that because even though we had kind of talked a little bit about what we were going to talk about tonight, um, part of the motivation why I suggested we talk about it tonight was recently I was part of an online conversation, an online Q&A that had a
Okay.
bunch of live questions that came in, and that was really fun again.
Yeah.
It is fun to engage with people. Um, and that Q&A session that I was part of was something that's done by the Google Developer Groups North America, called Between the Brackets. It's a monthly session that they have with some experts, some Googlers, some GDEs, so forth.
Okay.
And the subject of this one was Google's advanced head-mounted wearables, which is
Ooh.
code
Okay.
name for glass.
All
But they don't like
right.
using the term glass much anymore.
So it's the all right. So there's the original Google Glass.
So there's
The
there's the classic Google Glass, what was called the Explorer Edition, and that's what I'm wearing now. This is my
okay.
Explorer Edition version. That goes back, 9 or 10 years at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, it was launched at I/O 2012, and uh, it first got into the hands of developers and users um, in April or May of
Mhm.
2013. And some developers got a sneak preview of it in January and February of 2013. So we're coming up on we're hitting the 10-year milestones now.
Wow.
I know. But what's interesting is, and it lasted a few years and then was discontinued um, with, support, essentially killing support for it.
Okay.
And then a little bit later, they announced what they called Glass Enterprise Edition. And now they have something called uh, Glass Enterprise version 2. And that's this model.
All right.
Um, which it's similar in some ways. You're can't it's superficially they look the same aside from
Yeah.
the color.
Yeah.
Um, but there are some real differences between the two, which are both in hardware and software, which make it really, really um, interesting, I guess is the best way I could put it.
Well, the first comment I say, because you're saying it's coming up on 10 years, I'm used to devices like stop working after like 4 or 5 or 6 years, The fact that it's still going, um,
The fact that my Explorer edition is limping along is really a
yeah,
credit to something, and I'm not sure what.
yeah, that's what I was
Because
I was thinking. And
most developers, most people who use Glass or used Glass, um, talked about how its battery was in terrible shape after just a couple of years, and how
yeah,
it barely held a charge. And I still get relatively decent battery life out of it. I'm not doing huge amounts of stuff, but I'm still wearing it and it's still showing me the time and I still take pictures with it and so forth. But Enterprise Glass version 2, it's interesting to see the lessons they learned. And I think I don't agree with all of the lessons that they learned, to be
right.
fair. The biggest one I think is that their focus is on the enterprise at this point. They are not looking at a consumer device. They are not looking at something that is really meant to be worn around all the time.
So if I were to go out looking for Google Glass Enterprise, would I be able to find it and buy it by myself?
It's not impossible, but
But it's not easy.
it's not easy. And if you did, it's not really consumer friendly. It's mostly intended for third parties to add their software into it and sell that as a new bundle. So, for example, they have a partner with a medical company which has designed versions of it for doctors to use as part of examining a patient. So as part of that, they can dictate their notes through Glass. They can get a kind of a heads up glimpse at the patient notes that have been created in the past or what they're in for. And that company is the one that sells Enterprise Glass to doctors and hospitals and so forth.
So I'm assuming
and provides support and does all of the other stuff where
Yeah.
Google's kind of way out of the picture.
So Google provides the hardware and the platform of installing apps on it.
They even provide less than that.
Oh,
They provide the hardware and a reference operating system implementation.
Okay.
And companies can just take that take that implementation, put their own apps onto it and ship it, or they can modify that reference implementation if necessary.
okay. So it's really it's the specific purpose built solution that you can buy through that provider, the glasses, and it will include whatever it is, and likely some sort of a subscription or something.
However, the
Yeah.
company chooses to
Okay.
provide support or whatever for it. So yeah. But Google, let's put it this way. I have something that feels like it comes directly from Google. Google shipped it to me directly. I don't know how one would go about ordering it from Google. It's not like it's on the Google
Yeah.
store or anything.
Did they give you instructions on like the reference operating system? Could you conceptually, like modify your own?
Yes.
With
Yes.
stuff?
In theory, I could take, they provide a system image and they provide the source code for it, even since it's based on the Android open source platform.
Okay.
So, they provide all of that. So if I
So you
wanted
would
to,
use something like Java, right?
it's
Okay.
Java and C++.
Okay. All right.
And if I wanted to, I could take that and modify it and, put the new image on my glass, and hopefully I didn't just brick it or something.
Yeah.
And Google also does provide a way to load in APKs, which are
Yep.
the app, the underlying structure for an app on Android. So there is kind of a hacky way to do that, and they're promising less hacky ways to do that going forward.
Okay. But you would have you can just do a normal like app from like an Android mobile app and have them running on Glass. It would have to be like a special purpose built app.
Yes.
In fact, just happens to be packaged up in APKs.
And that actually gets to some of the recent announcements, which are pretty cool.
Oh, okay. All right.
But we'll get to that. So, correct. It's APK. That's the format, but you can't just take a regular Android app and toss it on there, because it doesn't support a number of the libraries that people are very used to using.
Probably doesn't have the juice to do it either.
What was that?
Probably doesn't have the juice to do it either.
No, it doesn't. And that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, it is powerful and it is well tuned for what it does, but you don't want to run huge CPU intensive apps on it. And we'll get to that in a second. We're jumping ahead of the game.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'll let you go at your own pace here.
No, because it directly ties into some of the recent announcements. So recently they announced that there's an early access program they're rolling out for stuff that will be coming available over the next few months. And in particular, there are 3 new features that are available to it. All of them tied to a new app that you install on your phone. And it's been tested with a Pixel phone. They're not sure which of the features will and won't work with the Pixel, but some of them definitely won't. And what this companion app does is it acts as a bridge between an app that is running on your phone and an app that is running on glass.
Oh, okay.
So you can do some of the processing directly on glass and offload some of the processing onto your phone, the
I
companion phone
see.
with it.
So
And so
what is, sorry, you keep going. I keep
Hey,
interrupting because I'm like, what
because
is
it's
this? What is
exciting, it
this?
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So so this includes things, the three major things that they're rolled out initially is they are previously taking photos, left the photo sitting on glass and nowhere else. And now this will sync the photo to your phone, where you can sync it to Google Plus. Oh boy, they let you know how old that is. You can sync it to Google Photos. Another feature that they have is synchronization with Google Tasks. So you can assign tasks from a desktop or from a mobile device, pick it up and manage it on your mobile device, but also see them directly on glass and check them off using glass, and that synchronizes to your phone.
Okay.
I was really excited about that one because that directly parallels the first app that I wrote for glass. That was the origin of Voodoo Drive, was that app.
They finally caught up to you, huh?
They finally, it only took them 10 years. And the third one, which I think a lot of people are going to be excited about, is, at I/O, we saw this live translation where people were talking and Glass provided subcaptions translated, a translated subcaption of what it heard.
Okay.
That's kind of aimed at their next generation device, but they were also able to do it for this device. And the translation, most notably, is handled on the Pixel's Tensor chip.
Oh, okay.
So instead
the
of
phone actually does the translation with all of its power,
right,
and then it's using the display on glass to
on
show the
glass to
result.
show it exactly.
Hmm.
And A, that's really powerful, and B, that starts getting into some of the things we've talked about in voice. That kind of aims for where voice starts to play a role.
Yeah, I was going to say we've been talking
glass.
a lot about glass, but where is voice? What does this have to do with voice devs? But I have a couple of questions.
Before we get right, okay, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. So, what is the mechanism for communication between glass and your phone? Is it Wi-Fi? Is it through the cloud? Is it
It is not through the cloud, and that's really important to understand. It is a direct connection using Wi-Fi direct.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting. I was expecting Bluetooth, but apparently it is using Wi-Fi direct, which is pretty cool. And this is where I think it starts getting really interesting. And again, where the voice first application starts coming in. So it's fine. Your phone is now talking to a head-mounted display.
Mm-hmm.
What if that technology was also used to talk to some other kind of display? Like a display that may be sitting on your desktop and takes voice input and gives audio output.
Ah, interesting. So your smart displays, how could you?
Right.
I could imagine, you can look at your, Google Hub or Nest Hub. What do they call it nowadays? Like
Nest Home Hub, I believe.
Nest Home Hub. You could look at that and you could say, oh, somebody's at the door, and access the camera in your doorbell. What if you could live stream to your device what you were seeing through your glass?
That's even funkier, because you can live stream from this to Google Meet. In fact, at the Voice Summit, I was demonstrating that. But that's a big cloud back and forth.
Yeah.
What if you could do that directly using just local devices? That would be interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that sounds pretty cool.
But also, even ignoring the glass aspect of it, what if you use that same technology on the Home Hub, and that when you asked it a question, it identified your voice, it knows who you are, and it routes that request to your phone?
Oh, I like some things about that, because then this whole context thing that we've been talking about is like, this is my identity, and this is these are my preferences and kind of my personality wallet.
Right.
Right? Or preference wallet. I don't know how you would call it. Trademark both of those, by the way. Just if your phone was a player kind of in that ecosystem, then you could walk around with your personal profile and preferences and permissions to use those preferences
Exactly.
anywhere that you go.
And even more, it's also directly talking to your phone and running the app on your phone.
Yeah.
And just displaying it on this local display. So if you can kind of think of this, or one of the ways I kind of think of this is, we've thought for a long time about how, using a phone or a desktop or a home or a smart display and it communicating with an app that's sitting in the cloud. What if instead of communicating with that app in the cloud, it's now communicating with that app on the phone?
Yeah.
That you now have a personal cloud network, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your phone is now replacing this cloud server for not all applications, certainly, but some applications.
Yeah.
And it can still make API calls out on the cloud, but it's doing it with your identity. I don't know that's what they're doing. I don't think, I don't know.
Man.
But
I hope somebody at Google catches on to this.
I hope so. Because that would take it from using a voice to launch an app, whatever, to using your voice on any local device to launch an app on your phone and use that device in the communication channel.
Yeah.
And that starts having massive, massive impacts of what you can do and how you can do it.
That opens up a whole bunch of use cases that just aren't possible right now.
Right. I mean, it also opens up use cases like, okay, I walk into a hotel room. I say hello. Okay. It now says, well, I don't have this voice print on record. Let me go talk to any local devices to see if any of them do. Connects to your phone. And now you're talking to your hotel room. You're talking to your phone through your hotel room's display.
Right. And then you can say, play my music or whatever. And you can do any of the display or control things. And it's just communicating with your phone. It's
or where appropriate, it's communicating with your phone. But at the very least, it's gotten identity and authorization from your phone.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
That just opens up a lot of things that you can do with your voice. And it lets us have inexpensive desktop smart display devices that are using the much more expensive mobile device.
Yeah.
In an appropriate way.
Yeah. You don't have to, people are going to update phones over time anyway. And it saves them, saves some of the cost and work in having to update smart displays, with more and more powerful hardware to handle different cases. If you can keep them relatively, it's got a mic and it's got a display and it's got some processing, but it's got network, connectivity and communications, but it doesn't have to keep pace per se with all the heavy processing,
right,
that you could handle with your phone.
I think the other interesting angle to this that I think about is it means that your phone can operate with the screen off.
Yes.
And the screen is the biggest battery suck on mobile devices.
That's true. And like the kind of the sell of voice early on, especially, was like, oh, it's a lot faster to just speak and talk to your smart speaker device as opposed to find my phone,
pulling out your phone, unlocking
it, find the app, So you still have the immediacy of having these devices because they'll become more and more ubiquitous, but you can also have all the security that goes along with having something on your phone because you can control permissions and what has access to, what. But it can use that processing power that's in your pocket.
Exactly. And again, I don't know if I don't know if anybody else has thought about this, but I certainly am encouraged by the fact that where Glass is going is to begin to encourage developers to think in terms of this split operation.
Yeah.
Where
you got a device that's doing some processing, talking locally to your phone.
Yep.
And replace device that does some processing locally with whatever. It could be
right.
Google Glass, it could be a smart speaker, it could be a smart display, it could be
right.
I
think that's a really exciting notion.
Yeah, no, that is.
But even if it's not what they've got on their immediate roadmap, it's what Glass has on their immediate roadmap.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a subset of developers which will start to use it to figure out the problems, to iron out some of the bugs, identify the additional things that it needs to do that weren't thought of initially, so that at some point down the road, it makes that transition for other devices even easier. And to be clear, that communication channel, as developers, we won't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
The software, their software, the Glass software on your phone will take care of that channel. Yeah. You will, there's a little bit that you'll need to add to a standard app, and a little bit that you'll need to add to the Glass app. But for the most part, it will work very transparently.
Yeah.
And
cool.
If that works well, that sets a model for how it can be applied in other domains. So yeah. I'm really excited to kind of see how that's going to work, and see how, the best places to do it.
It's interesting because we've talked about Glass has been around for 10 years, and in some ways it was cutting edge, and then it kind of moved to the background, and now that has the potential of kind of spurring innovation and be back on the cutting edge again.
Yeah. I think one of the other the cautionary tale, though, when it comes to voice, and there is a cautionary tale when it comes to voice, is that this model is actually one of the great things about this model is that I could wake it up by literally saying something like, "Okay, Glass, take a picture," and it would take a picture. This model doesn't have it.
Yeah.
It does not have voice commands at all right now. Doesn't have voice wake words, doesn't have hot words. Everything is touch controlled. And when talking about why, Google is taking the attitude of, one of the things they saw was there were problems with voice. The audio, the microphones in this would pick up a lot of extraneous noise.
Yeah.
It wasn't always great at hot word detection. People would frequently do audio sniping, so they'd walk by and say, "Okay, Glass, take a picture," or "Okay, Glass," so people who were walking by could trigger it.
Yeah.
And the things weren't quite capable to handle things as people expected, and there was a huge privacy concern behind having a microphone that could pick up anything.
Yeah.
This model partly addresses that in an upcoming update. Whenever the microphone is live, there's going to be a green light on the front indicating that there's that there are privacy issues.
That's interesting. I thought they would have picked like the red light that you would have like on a video camera or something.
Apparently green is standard for something. I don't know what, but they chose green instead of red, looking less like a Cyclops, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So that's one thing that will be coming, again, out of all the privacy concerns that are inherent in this kind of a device.
Yeah.
And then second is that they are using the lessons they've learned from building the Google Assistant and the Google Home and the Nest Hub to improve the audio detection. So it's harder for other people to go and say something that'll trigger it.
Yeah.
The OK Glass or whatever it will be tuned to your voice, just like
Yep.
Hey G is tuned to your voice on Nest devices.
Okay.
So that's an example where they've learned lessons in the past 10 years about what to avoid, but also learned lessons in the past 5 years about how they can improve the technology to make it more personal.
Yeah. So I guess I was thinking, back to one of the things that we saw at the conference was a bridge recording technology. And there is an API actually to a bridge where you could upload audio and it will send you back a annotated transcription with like medical words and
well, I mean, for that matter, in preparing the podcast every week, I prepare a transcript and subtitles, and that's done with automatic transcription.
Yeah. So do you think Glass is ready to do that type of transcription, like 2 or 3 people in a closed room?
Let's put it this way. Brian Rommel, when I think it was the Pixel 5 came out, whichever Pixel had the first tensor chip, it did live transcription on device, and it did it very well. And Brian was doing some testing with it for medical purposes, and his results claimed to be very good. Now, imagine that you're going to have that same tensor chip or the next generation tensor chip with the Pixel 7 doing that translation, but getting its input from Glass or getting its input from earbuds and microphone. It doesn't need to be head mounted the same way. We've got other head mounted, we've got other devices that'll work with as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's potential there.
Okay.
And actually, this notion of we've got other devices as well, I think is important when you think about kind of where it's going and what we as developers need to start thinking about more and more. And that's this notion that data needs to be available wherever we want to use it.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I think Google understood a long time ago, has been more difficult for them to help explain recently. But they're trying again, and I think doing a better job at getting across to developers that, okay, if you could store it on a phone, that's fine, but you still need to make it available from a desktop computer because that might be the better interface for it.
Yeah.
And now as we're talking audio devices and Glass and so forth, you still want access to that data from your voice device on your desk, in your car, on your head-mounted device, on your watch. You want to be able to do it wherever it makes the most sense. And you can't just say, okay, I'm going to keep a copy of this data everywhere. You've got to have better ways to synchronize and control that data.
Yep.
And there are a lot of techniques to do it. I mean, the easiest one is something like, the Firestore database, where you can store it, protect it, and it'll synchronize with all of these devices. But that's pushing it off into the cloud. How do you do that same sort of thing on your phone? And we're starting to see those tools now. But it requires a new way of thinking for mobile developers. So it's a lot of mobile developers need to start thinking about, okay, how do I write something for both my phone and my watch and my head-mounted display?
Yep.
How do I write something?
They're companion apps, yeah.
Right. Well, are they companion apps? Are they integrated in some way? How do they talk to each other? How do we need them to talk to each other? How do we, so yeah, and more importantly, what does it look like on each of those devices? Because it's going to be different. We want to do the right tasks using the right device. So these are things that as developers and designers, we need to start thinking more about.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that some more.
Yeah, no, this is pretty cool. It's got some good topic clarity. Like I just kept finding myself thinking like, well, what about this or what about this? But yeah, I think it's hinting towards a kind of an inflection point of where things could go.
Yep. And it's going to be really exciting to see where other players in this market start trying to do stuff and how they do it and what the implications are going to be. I think once Google starts saying, yeah, you can install a companion app on a phone and have everything work through the phone. Are we going to start seeing, companies like Meta trying to do the same sort of thing?
Yeah.
And of course, what is Apple going to end up doing?
Yeah.
Because
So
who knows
yeah.
what Apple's going to end up doing. So lots of exciting stuff, lots of exciting questions. But I'm really excited to see exactly what the developer APIs for this, this split program,
Yeah.
this split app are going to look like. I'm really excited to look at it and find out and play with it.
Well, I'm excited. Thanks for bringing this topic to our podcast today. I learned some stuff and had some stuff to get excited about.
Yeah. No, so folks know how passionate I am about glass. If you're interested in this, you can find me on Twitter, find me on LinkedIn. I do my office hours every Wednesday, and you're always invited to come chat about that. And we'd love to see your comments or thoughts in the comment section below. And if you do have questions, we'll talk about them there, or we'll talk about them another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Alan.
Take care, Mark. Hope you have a great week.
You too.